So we have a lot of stuff to cover in today's update, but hey everyone, how's it going today? And welcome back to another update. So the big thing is that in today's update, I really want to talk about probably one of the very common and probably one of the most important questions. And there's a lot of articles that are floating around right now, really talking about whether or not the fourth stimulus check and the fourth stimulus package and all of the social programs can ever come back and be revived again. Because as most of you guys know, is that the very, very fast answer is that right now when it comes to the world of the fourth stimulus package, fast answer is that it's struggling. Now, they are making a lot of progress, but obviously it's very, very different from seeing progress and then the actual stamp of approval to show that it's actually physically happening. And the fast answer to, I guess, the other question, which is about whether or not it can come back again, is the fast answer is technically it can always come back, so it's technically yes. However, whether or not it's actually probable to happen is another story. And it's there's a much more in-depth answer, which is what we're going to talk about in today's update. So, as always, real fast, before we begin, consider smashing the like button. Of course, it's always greatly appreciated, but you guys can decide. Consider subscribing if you guys are interested. Maybe feel free to also share any personal comments, thoughts, maybe predictions by the end of what you currently think about the current fourth stimulus package. Maybe a very, very huge just heads up is that I do believe is that as we are now wrapping up and with everything going on in Congress, we will still definitely be making content about stimulus or certainly just economic news, depending on how things go. But I do want to maybe just give a heads up is that I do believe is that going forward we might start to diversify the content a little bit, so it's going to be a huge mix. So maybe there's that. Of course, I think the core of everything is that it's all going to be about finance and finding ways to hopefully put money inside of our pockets, even if it's through non-stimulus ways. But with that being said, let's get this video started. So the story that's really going on right now is that inside of a Congress, many of our leaders in Congress, such as like Nancy Pelosi, Biden, Schumer, they are definitely trying to take attempts or certainly make the effort in order to try to save the Build Back package, Build Back Better plan, and basically all of the fourth stimulus programs that we care about, like child tax credit, Social Security, money inside of our pockets. However, whether or not currently at this current time as we're speaking, it's going to be a probable thing, in my personal opinion, and there are certain ways that they can potentially save it, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, but in my personal speculation, and the reason why there has to be a little bit of a personal side to it, is because we are talking about something in the future which has not actually happened yet, so of course there's going to be a little bit of a personal insight to it, and that's just the nature of politics, is that I do actually very much believe it is very probable that we can still very much see more stimulus programs. However, I think whether or not we can see more probably actually will depend a lot more about the specific program, because the story is that the good news is that they've now started to finally compromise over certain plans that everyone, or certainly enough votes that's needed to agree, can agree, including Joe Manchin. So for example, things about climate change, and that's just one example. However, there are obviously a lot of other plans that they maybe are not very much in agreement about. And I think it's because of that reason, one of the big plans that I know that there's definitely a lot of conflict is pretty much going to be the original fourth stimulus social package, because at this current time, Joe Manchin now sadly seems very fixed. It seems like he's basically held firm to his opinion now for the last couple of weeks, or ever since we had his answer. And I think at this current time, because it seems like he's very fixed about it, that package is probably not very likely to be able to go through Congress. However, maybe onto some brighter news is that because they all recognize this, what they are currently doing right now is to try to create a much more smaller, skinny bill. And I do believe that this is the part that is actually very probable to be able to approve inside of Congress. Now, in terms of the actual specific ways about how this Build Back Better plan slash fourth stimulus with all of these programs like child tax, checks, all that stuff can potentially play out, there's really technically three things, or technically many, many things, but just three principal primary things about how this can really play out going forward from here. The first way really is that if all of the people in Congress are able to finally compromise on an idea, then that's a very, very probable thing. And I think the good news is that back then they were really just trying to work with Joe Manchin. Now a lot of them are actually even trying to work with just Republicans in general. So the good news about this is that because of that reason, if they're able to try to compromise, obviously, there's going to be a lot of disagreements, but I think the goal is that maybe, say for example, they would work with a politician that maybe doesn't agree with a certain something, but maybe if they can offer some kind of deal where perhaps it's sort of like a, like a situation where it's like, maybe you don't like this, but we'll give you a deal or, a proposal, I'll give you this if you give me that. So I think the goal is that if they can potentially compromise either with Manchin or if not with Manchin, maybe with some of the Republicans, that is really the goal or one of the ways that they can potentially now get the Build Back Better slash stimulus programs approved and going through. And then the second way that they're potentially looking to save it is really going to be through the classic method of an executive order. And that's the part that really is interesting. As some of you guys know is that, and this is something that Donald Trump did probably about a year and a half ago. Wild how fast time flies. Maybe comment if you guys remember that moment. But the idea really is that it is very probable or possible right now that many people are already preaching Biden to do some kind of executive order in order to get stimulus programs through. Now, I think it's very, very important to note that in terms of why he's not already doing it is because the first reason really is because I think the goal at this current time, it's just more about personal belief, is that he's trying to create unity in Congress. And if he tries to move forward with an executive order, what he's very afraid of is that it's going to break that unity from going through. The other big thing, and I think this is the part that maybe is not even a full choice, is that an executive order allows you to kind of just bypass a lot of things and create your own rules, which is kind of like what Donald Trump did with unemployment when he extended it about a year ago briefly for about 6 weeks through the LWA program, if you guys remember that. However, there are a lot of limitations that executive orders do not allow you to do. So for example, one of them is that it does not allow you to create more money. What you can do is that you can take money and try to reallocate it and spend it in other ways, but you cannot just create money through like just absolute thin air. Now, with that being said is that I do know at this time there is definitely enough money inside of Congress to work with in order to do that if they genuinely really want to. Really the goal now, or just the idea now, is to see that if they physically do it and also how they act in perspective to their values. So kind of now going back to with like the idea of Joe Biden and then trying to create unity and get an agreement going as much as possible if they don't have to go through that entire procedure. And then the last way we can potentially see some kind of approval going on, whether or not it's going to be saved, is going to be trying to take it kind of like the skinny bill situation, but now really bring it onto the state level to kind of approve it in a very niche way. Now, most of you guys may have already heard this idea being spread around, but really the even greater significance that I don't think a lot of people are really talking about is that, as some of you guys may or may not know on the news, currently at this time, President Joe Biden is really just traveling. He's traveling around the country. I believe he was recently in Virginia, really trying to promote his Build Back Better plan. And you might be wondering why he, would even bother going through it from state to state. And the answer is because of a couple reasons. The first is that because if he can hopefully potentially preach and promote his ideas, even if they don't necessarily do it on the federal level, the hope is maybe he can convince a lot of politicians now to do these programs on a state level. So if they all end up just collaboratively or just collectively, going through this, then maybe by then, it becomes a whole bunch of, and we're already starting to see it technically, California has a state stimulus check, a lot of other states have their own mini unemployment program, and if they can maybe collectively do it, but as individual states, it would basically be the equivalent almost to as if they did get their programs approved. And then maybe the less talked about reason why he's really doing this is because it's also, as much as it is about the program, it also is about trying to help with the actual elections. So as some of you guys may or may not know is that, you know, elections, they happen every couple of years. And I think that it's because he knows that eventually elections have to come up, and eventually in order to keep the power inside of Congress, by trying to promote it state to state, he can maybe try to also in an indirect way gain a lot of supporters, gain a lot of votes. So maybe it's not even just about that, but if they can maybe add or make Congress even more blue. Basically, they already completed the blue wave, but just to make it even more blue, maybe they can even gain more support to now make it even easier now in the future to basically approve stimulus programs. Right now, there are 50 Democrats, 50 Republicans inside of the Senate, but if, say, for example, there were 60 Democrats and 40 Republicans, many of this might have even already been approved. But of course, that's really the biggest speculated ideas about how this can really play out right now at this current time. So with that being said, that's pretty much what I really wanted to share in today's update. So if you guys found that insightful and haven't done so, maybe consider smashing the like button, consider subscribing as we get more information, and also for, again, other kinds of finance related topics. Of course, you guys can always decide, but it is greatly appreciated. And as always, feel free to comment any questions, thoughts, maybe suggestions or opinions, or honestly just really anything. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. Stay safe, stay well, and hope to see you guys next time. Thank you guys so much again.